Hi, this is Kit, and I'm going to walk you through a springtime hive inspection. You can see the state of my top bar hive. There is still insulation strapped on with bungee cords, just the foam rigid insulation that you can use in walls. That's what I do to help provide a little bit of extra warmth to get through the cold winter months, to help them conserve some resources. It is still secure. And you're going to see in a moment what my flowering situation looks like. So the trees are starting to pollinate a little bit. There's some buds on one of my peach trees. We have some daffodils that are starting to open. And then, of course, there are some dandelions, as you'll see, in my yard. They are providing a little bit of pollen resources to my hive. Now, just like my other hive inspections, I've left the sound on so you can get a sense for how this hive inspection sounds compared to others and how the bees are disturbed or not. You will find that bees right now are quite chill. So I did smell a little bit of banana smell, which is actually what their alarm pheromone looks like. I smelled that right after I accidentally breathed by blowing air into the hive. I was trying to blow away some propolis fragments later on in the video, and they got quite perturbed. So what I'm doing right now is I'm looking through those back bars, and I'm looking for the blackest of the comb, just like what you saw, and I'm sorting it. I'm looking to see if there's any honey that it remains, because what we're going to do, we're going to take any capped honey and we're going to move it to the front of the hive, and then we're going to move any empty black comb to the very back, because we are very much hoping that the bees fill that with honey and not with brood, so that we can remove that black comb. It's part of kind of the cleansing process. So you're going to see there is about, I think I had 7 bars that were completely empty comb. And I had, in the end, I had 8 bars that had brood, which was quite a lot for the spring, and 2 bars that had that kind of capped honey, which most likely is crystallized at this point of the season. So I'm sorting it right now as I look. Now, I wasn't sure what was going on in this particular frame, so I inspected it a lot, and then I even got a flashlight out to look. There were eggs present. So this was the first sign that I had of any brood, and as I just mentioned, I had 8 bars, 8 frames of brood. Oh, no, that one wasn't the eggs. It's one that I kind of go off camera with, and I actually use my flashlight to look inside of those really dark cells, because it's very difficult to see sometimes, those eggs, but they're tiny little specks. So I did find eggs, and so I wanted to take better, beginning of season notes on my bars. So you can see all of my remaining, last season notes. I can scrape those off. They're paper, so they're already kind of disintegrating. I wrote egg. I mean, you couldn't really read that on the camera. That was a little wishful thinking on my part. So I am labeling this bar as having eggs on it. So the next time I go in, I can kind of know where my brood was beginning. And then I didn't know how much brood there was going to be, and there ended up being quite a lot. So I marked it all by scraping off the old labels and putting on new ones. Now, for the most part, I saw regular old female worker bee brood, which you can kind of tell based on the size and the shape of the caps on those. I did find some drone cells that had drones in them. So that is an indication that I'm going to need to watch this hive in the next few weeks to make sure that they don't start swarming. I didn't see any swarm cells present as I did my inspection. Those swarm cells, as I've talked about in previous videos, they appear on the edges, the outside edges of these bars. And I didn't see any of those. So that's usually what happens right before they do decide to swarm. And part of what I'm doing right now, this is based on the book by... I actually talked to myself a little bit on video, which I normally don't do, knowing that I'm going to be leaving the sound on, but I kind of forgot myself. So I was a little chatty about the different drone cells that I found. Anyway, there's kind of like the Bible for top bar beekeeping. Les Crowder, I believe, is the author's name, but I was just looking around to see if I had the book nearby, and I don't. So I'm pretty sure it's Les. This is kind of using his method for going into the spring. That you open things up, you make sure that you do have food stores, because this is the time when bees can starve to death, is right before really there's any nectar flowing. You can see actually how wobbly that particular frame was. They were going to need to build some more reinforcement on there. It's very heavy with brood right now and not very much structural integrity connection to the top bar, so you can see how it's wobbling around. You have to be really delicate with that one, and it isn't even warm out right now. But Les Crowder's method is that you bring all of the remaining honey stores at the beginning of the spring to the front of the hive so that it's easily accessible to the brood as they go through cold nights or days when they can't get out and there's no food remaining, and then you move any of that old black comb that doesn't have brood in it to the back. So that's what I did, and you can see there's lots of black comb remaining. It's just hard, it's impossible. That's one of my original bars. I think there's like a waviness to it. It's so old, and I can never get them to not lay eggs. I should have grabbed it in the middle of the winter and taken it away from them. So that was where I annoyed them a little bit, and I got the smell of bananas, so they were releasing alarm pheromone, and I just didn't want them to get agitated. Sometimes when they release alarm pheromone, they just get agitated, and it's no good for them because there's no reason for them to be agitated. I'm being pretty gentle with them in my inspection. Did you eat your lunch? You need to eat your lunch. Excuse that interruption. So as of yet, I had not discovered my queen, and sometimes you don't see the queen. Sometimes she's laying eggs, so it's hard to see her like really long abdomen. But I was looking around for her because I always like that reassurance, despite seeing eggs laid, which means that she was alive as of like the last few days, even maybe the last day. It's nice to see a living queen going around, and I believe I discovered her in the next bar or two. She was right at the end, and there was nothing going on the bar that she's present upon. There was no eggs, there was no honey, so it led me to assume that she was maybe about to lay some eggs. So it isn't in this bar yet, but it's going to be the next bar that she is discovered in. So again, I'm re-tagging all of my labels to freshen them up for the season. I just really tagged the ones with brood, and I'm going to wait to observe what happens on the rest of the bars. I just tried to clear them out, I think, mostly, but I'm not actually notating empty bars at this point because they ought to be filled rather soon with either brood or with honey and pollen stores. So it's going to be one or the other. So here we are. Now the camera angle is such that it's a little bit pulled out when I try to point her out on where she is present, but maybe at a large scale you can actually see her. She's got a long black abdomen, and as I've talked about in the past, you can tell where she is because there's tends to be a space, like a void behind her wherever she moves, like a little train almost of space.
Big beautiful queen.
So that felt really good. And I had made it right to the entrance of my hive. So I'm going to mark that that's where I spotted her, just with a Q on my label. And that's when I pulled this bar back up because I'm like, did I miss something? Like, how weird that she's on this frame. There's nothing going on here. And you can see actually those beginning frames. One you might recognize from last year. It just has a couple of little wax combs starting to be built. They have not done any work there. And then the other one is empty. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to take those honey, the capped honey frames, the two that I discovered, and I'm going to move them to the beginning. Now to do this, you're going to see me, I have to cut the bottom part of the comb off because in this particular hive, there's a kind of a screen on the base of most of my hive, except for the very beginning, the very front and the very back. So it doesn't fit unless I cut some of that comb off. And so that's what I'm doing for the 2 bars that had capped honey on them. And just trying to clean it up a little bit with the old labels and not really relabeling these portions. It's kind of inherent what was present on those bars based on what I'm doing. And again, I don't know, as my hive actually gets into summer mode, I'm not going to be certain what they are doing until they start doing it. So I'm putting that back in the front because I don't have any other honeycombs. Or sorry, I guess it is honeycombs technically. I don't have any other comb that has honey in it. I discovered I was going to have to chop that one in half as well. Or not in half, but chop the bottom part. Oh, that one dropped. Bees tend to not like it when you destroy their comb, but again, they are so chill at this time of year. You can hear they're not buzzing around. They are amassing some population, so it's not like they aren't present. There's plenty of flight paths going in and out, so they're going out collecting pollen. I didn't see anything that would have prevalent nectar on it, but a lot of things are pollinating right now, and I saw bees carrying pollen as I did my inspection. So at this point, I'm just scooching everything back together. The wide angle on this camera kind of makes it look a little wampus on those angles, but they are lined up. So again, I had 8 bars that had brood. I had 7 bars without anything that are all empty. That's kind of what I'm scooching through now at the very end. And then I had the 2 bars that had some crystallized honey, and those I moved to the front. Everything else I moved to the back, and I moved to the very back the blackest empty combs I have, because the black comb means that they've just been used a lot of times for brood, and it's just healthy to clear that out. That's again Les Crowder's method for taking care of your hive in the spring, is trying to keep it healthy by moving some of that really old comb out. So removing my paper labels, they're just going to kind of disintegrate outside. Some of them would not detach with the adhesive. So that's it. They are looking really good. I'm pretty confident that they're going to make it through the rest of this spring, but you do have to watch for starvation right now. So I might do another inspection in a couple weeks to check on their food stores. Usually it takes them, if they're really heavily eating, like a couple of weeks to eat through all the honey on a frame if there's nothing else going on. So, a couple of weeks I'll be able to determine if they've eaten through the 2 remaining bars that have crystallized honey on them. But I'm feeling good, ready to go into summer and hopefully harvest some honey in the next couple of weeks. So there she is. Cheers.